So, you know those release dates for the classic You Don't Know Jack games that are found on Steam and many gaming news sites? Well, I have one thing to say about them. They're wrong! Hey everybody, Sage here, and today we're going to talk about an irreverent trivia party game that some of you have probably heard of. Since its debut in 1995, You Don't Know Jack has been praised as one of the greatest and funniest trivia games ever made. With its witty humor, innovative gameplay, and of course lots of creativity, the franchise is still pretty popular today, receiving several follow-ups as well as a couple reboots over the years. Initially a joint venture between software developer Berkeley Systems, known for their After Dark screensavers and their lesser-known accessibility innovations, and entertainment multimedia company Jellyvision, the rights to the games currently belong to Jackbox Games, formerly Jellyvision Games, who acquired the publishing rights from Berkeley's successor Sierra in 2004. Hey everybody, Savvy Sage here from the future to correct my past self. I made this video back in January of 2021, so as you might expect, there's bound to be a few errors that were made during research. In this case, Jellyvision didn't acquire the publishing rights to You Don't Know Jack in 2004, because Jellyvision already had the rights by that time. Thanks to the Wayback Machine from the
Internet Archive,
we're able to figure out what really happened. According to Jellyvision's website from December of 2002, the company announced that their, quote, fruitful partnership with Sierra has ended its 5-year run. Well, technically 7 if you count Berkeley Systems. This explains why Jellyvision was able to self-publish You Don't Know Jack Volume 6, The Lost Gold in North America, before the original classic games were reissued in the following year. So, how did I make this error? Well, despite thorough research, I didn't have any guidelines or fail-safes in place at the time. I used to rely on a limited number of sources, such as database websites that, looking back now, have gotten plenty of facts wrong, such as incorrectly crediting Berkeley Systems as a co-developer for The Lost Gold, despite the fact that they really had nothing to do with this title. This is why I always cast a wide net when doing research, instead of relying on just a few sources, especially ones that don't have evidence to back it up. Anyways, back to the video. Don't be surprised if I chime in every now and then. Jellyvision has since re-released most of its classics in some capacity, with the most recent being the Classic Bundle, released onto Steam in November of 2013 by Jackbox Games. Now, I'll be going into more detail on Jackbox's history in an upcoming documentary called The Tale Inside the Box. Yeah, that never really came to fruition. I did attempt a few Jackbox game reviews since then, however, my latest one didn't do as well as I hoped it would, so yeah, sorry about that. However, I haven't given up my dream of creating the ultimate Jackbox Encyclopedia, but I'll talk about that near the end. But for now, I want to focus on one specific part of the You Don't Know Jack Classic Bundle that most people overlook: the release dates. Because as it turns out, the release dates that Jackbox and many major gaming websites give have one thing in common. They're either not exact or completely incorrect. But after a couple of months of research and browsing through a place called the Internet Archive, I have managed to not only track down the exact dates of all of the classic You Don't Know Jack games, at least the ones that were released in North America, but I also learned a lot of new things about these games in the process. Now, first off, before I go down this rabbit hole, I want to let you all know that I'm not trying to diss Jackbox here. They're really talented developers, and I really enjoy their games. But I'm also a guy who's really passionate about preserving tech and gaming history, and I actually try my best to get the history and timelines as accurate as possible. There's also a common belief by some that say the history of a company is far more interesting than their products. And while that is true to some extent, Jackbox is an exception to the rule. Their history are just as intriguing as their games. I wanted to make this episode primarily because there's a lot of misinformation going around regarding Jackbox's precursor titles, and since I'm also working on a documentary about their in-depth history, I want to make sure I get every single detail as accurate as possible, even if that means taking a long time to get it just right. But anyways, without further ado, let's take a look. The first game as part of the Classic Bundle is You Don't Know Jack Volume 1 XL. According to Jackbox Games, it was released on September 12th, 1995. Now, while that is technically true, it was actually for the original playable demo of the game. Okay, so quick correction here. While the demo was available around that time, it actually came out earlier, specifically after Berkeley launched their Toasted website and released Totally Twisted After Dark in August of 1995. On CD-ROM copies of Totally Twisted After Dark and After Dark for Windows 95, the latter of which I'm very grateful to now have a physical copy of, consumers got their first look at the irreverent quiz show party game through a QuickTime video. This trailer will be brought up briefly later, but one thing that is worth mentioning is that the trailer on the disc has a date of August 2nd, 1995. Regardless, if the press release for Totally Twisted After Dark is anything to go by, the demo for Jack was released on Toasted around that time. This is, yet again, another example as to why you should cast a wide net, because it might bite you in the butt later. This is where we get into the first big piece of evidence. According to the September 1995 issue of Computer Gaming World magazine, there is a single page dedicated to You Don't Know Jack. Not only do we get to see what looks like a prototype logo for the game, but we also get to see what looks like Jellyvision's first logo, with their slogan, "Entertainment that tastes like chicken." Oh, and there's also a blurb at the bottom talking about a downloadable demo of the game. So now that we already know that You Don't Know Jack's official release was not in September, let's get on to finding the actual release date for the game. The next piece of evidence comes from a Berkeley Systems press release dated May 1996, which was reposted by the now-defunct Coming Soon magazine. According to this press release, which talked about a You Don't Know Jack game show in development, Berkeley Systems stated that You Don't Know Jack was, quote, first introduced in October of 1995. To further prove this, there's also a trailer for the game located in an After Dark CD-ROM, and near the end of that trailer, it also states that the game would be available in October. And this was where I got stuck in regards to finding the exact date. We got the correct month down, but what about the day? Well, in order to find evidence of that, we have to dig a little deeper into the game's contents on the disc. But even then, trying to find the exact and most accurate release date for this game was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Well, as luck would have it, I happened to come across an eBay listing for an original non-reissue copy of You Don't Know Jack. And of course, I went ahead and bought it. And while browsing through the contents of the disc, I made a few interesting discoveries. After plopping in the original disc onto my PC, I then browsed through the files and checked the last modified dates on them. Now on the reissues, the latest file date I could find that matched the October 1995 quota was October 3rd, and the rest were all dated higher than that. But on the original 1.0 release, which I happen to have, the latest file date on the disc reads October 10th for the README file. This could mean that You Don't Know Jack had to be released somewhere around mid to late October. To further prove this, an installer for the version 1.01 patch for the game, which fixes numerous bugs and crashes, is dated November 1st, 1995, while the README is dated November 17th. Also, on a quick side note, the earliest review of the game I could find is from late November 1995. And now we come to the most damning evidence of them all, an October 13th, 1995 issue of the California State University's State Hornet newspaper. The issue in particular covered a graphics design seminar, Visualize 3, which was held in the University Union's Redwood Room at the California State University on Saturday, October the 7th. Berkeley's creative director, Mark Gibson, was one of the attendees, and while on stage, he brought up 3 audience members to help test out their new game, You Don't Know Jack, which was slated for release, quote, next week. And since the newspaper was published on the Friday after the seminar, the game's release couldn't possibly be during the second week of October, as once again, the README file has a date of October 10th. So that pretty much leaves us with the weekdays during the third week of October 1995. But on which particular day? We'll come back to that later. But for now, I wanted to prove that the original You Don't Know Jack, at least for the original retail release, was not released in September. Next up, we have the first themed title, You Don't Know Jack Sports, hosted by everyone's favorite sports lover, Guy Towers. According to Jackbox, the game was released on September 30th, 1996. Well, this one's pretty easy to disprove, and it comes direct from Berkeley Systems, the original publishers, themselves. According to this press release on the newsroom of their former website, You Don't Know Jack Sports shipped out on October 17th, 1996. So, there you go. Next up, we have You Don't Know Jack Volume 2, the sequel to the first game, and the first in the franchise to introduce Dis or Dat. According to Jackbox, the game was released on November 30th, 1996. Now, while the month and year are correct, the day is not. This correction can be found, once again, through a Berkeley Systems press release dated November 4th, 1996. Next, we come to the second themed title, You Don't Know Jack Movies, the first game to make Cookie's hosting debut, as well as being the last game independently published by Berkeley Systems, before Sierra would take over publishing duties from then on. According to Jackbox, the game was released on April 30th, 1997, Again, while the month and year are correct, the day is not, and this correction can be found through another Berkeley Systems press release dated April 16th, 1997. Next, we come to the third mainstream You Don't Know Jack game, Volume 3, which I so happen to have a copy of. According to Jackbox, it was released on October 31st, or Halloween Day, 1997. Again, the month and year are correct, but the day is not. Now this one was a bit tricky to find, and it required digging a little deeper. According to a Berkeley Systems E3 1997 press release, two new You Don't Know Jack games, Volume 3 and Television, were both scheduled for release in October. And that's about it. There wasn't a single press release issued by Berkeley themselves regarding Volume 3's release, at least as far as I know through the Internet Archive. However, I didn't give up that easily. Berkeley's You Don't Know Jack page containing Volume 3 has the earliest archive date of October 13th, 1997, while the Volume 3 page itself has the earliest archived date of October 12th, 1997. Another piece of evidence, an article from GameSpot dating October 14th, 1997, suggests that Volume 3 was released on the same week. But seeing how the previous volume was released on a Monday, it would only make sense that the correct release date for You Don't Know Jack Volume 3 would most likely be Monday, October 13th, 1997. And then we have the third themed title, You Don't Know Jack Television, which, according to Jackbox, was released on May 9th, 1997. No. Much like with Volume 3, there wasn't a single press release issued by Berkeley themselves regarding Television's release. However, while trying to find the date for Volume 3 on Berkeley's website through the Internet Archive, I came across an interesting discovery. On the same You Don't Know Jack page we saw earlier, you can see Television on the bottom right corner, and what looks to be the proper release date of October 31st, 1997, the same day that Volume 3 supposedly came out. Now this correction actually makes sense if you think about it, as the release pattern for the original You Don't Know Jack prior to 1998 went like this: mainstream, themed, then mainstream themed, rather than the other way around as the Steam pages state. So hopefully these cases can be put to rest. So now let's move on to the teen spin-off, You Don't Know Jack HeadRush, originally released as just simply HeadRush, which, by the way, despite it using the same gameplay as You Don't Know Jack, wasn't originally marketed as a You Don't Know Jack game, aside from the fact that it's, quote, from the makers of You Don't Know Jack. Anyways, according to Jackbox, HeadRush was released on April 20th, 1998, and while that date is rather humorous, it's also rather bogus. The first piece of evidence disproving it is from once again a Berkeley Systems press release, this time talking about the game's disc containing songs from Mercury Records. This press release, dated August 18th, 1998, states that the game would ship, quote, later that month, and then comes the press release from the original publisher, Sierra themselves. According to this press release, the game shipped on August 31st, 1998. And then we have You Don't Know Jack Volume 4, The Ride, often considered to be one of the best in the franchise, featuring all of the hosts from the previous games, as well as introducing a bunch of new question types. According to Jackbox, the game was released on November 30th, 1998. And again, while the month and year are correct, the day is not. This correction can be found on press releases from both Berkeley Systems and its parent Sierra, where it states that The Ride was, quote, ready to roll on November 16th, 1998. And now we come to the last game in the Classic Bundle, You Don't Know Jack Volume 6, The Lost Gold. And yes, I know you might be asking, where's Volume 5? Well, technically it doesn't exist, at least in name. While Jackbox might have clarified 5th Dementia as the theoretical 5th volume, an old Amazon listing of You Don't Know Jack Offline, along with its bundling in the Jumbo Pack, might contradict their statements. Well, this one is pretty easy to disprove, and it comes from Sierra themselves. According to a press release issued on April 27, 2000, Sierra Attractions announced plans to release several games throughout the year, including Backstage Pass, which I did a whole episode on if you'd like to learn more, You Don't Know Jack Volume 2 for PlayStation, which was later announced at E3 as Mach 2, and You Don't Know Jack Volume 5, which was officially announced at E3 as, you guessed it, 5th Dementia. To this day, there's still no clear reason as to why Amazon listed Offline as Volume 5, despite the fact that it's more of a NetShow compilation and not a mainstream game in the series. Maybe it was because it was bundled with the Jumbo Pack when it came out, but even then, its bundling in the 2001 pack with Louder, Faster, Funnier, another NetShow compilation, further proves the facts. 5th Dementia is Volume 5. While we're on topic, I do want to quickly mention that I did an insider vlog a while back unboxing my copy of 5th Dementia, complete with 20-year-old popcorn. So for those curious, you can check that out along with my other vlogs if you're a savvy insider on YouTube or Patreon. Anyways, hopefully that's all the errors I made in that video. Unless I find more, so I may pop up again later. Anyways, getting back to the Lost Gold, often considered to be the least liked in the franchise, with its short gameplay among other factors. According to Jackbox, the game was released on December 1st, 2003, and initially, that's what I believed. The earliest I could find the You Don't Know Jack page containing the Lost Gold archived was on December 5th, and it looked like I had reached a dead end. That was until I literally came across the Lost Gold. While doing a Google search on the game, I came across a Business Wire press release announcing the Lost Gold. However, when I tried to visit the page normally, it gave me a 404 error, but I didn't give up that easily. Thanks to Google Cache, I was able to retrieve a text-only version of that article, and here it is. Not only was the press release from Jellyvision themselves, but you can also see its publishing date, along with the actual release date for the Lost Gold, November 12th, 2003. Well, upon further research, I realized that I had done goofed. So remember how I said it's a good idea to double check your information? According to Jason Montgomery's unofficial You Don't Know Jack Green Room, he reported news straight from Jellyvision that stated Volume 6 was coming out on Monday, December 1st, which is the exact date shown on the Steam page. So, Jackbox was right all along? This news was first reported on November 9th, 2003 at 4:56 a.m. UTC, or 10:56 p.m. Central Time, November 8th, a few days before the Business Wire press release. I guess back then, because the press release officially announced the game was available for order on their website, I assumed that was the actual release date for the game. Well, turns out that's not the case. So here's what we do know about Volume 6 The Lost Gold. It was originally released in Germany as Volume 4 on September 12, 2003 by Take-Two, according to the official German You Don't Know Jack website from 2003. Then, it was quickly localized in English as Volume 6 The Lost Gold, and officially announced in November, but was only available to order through Jellyvision's website. Jason Montgomery reported this news before Jellyvision issued a press release on Business Wire. Then finally, if this report is to be believed, the Lost Gold shipped to customers on December 1st, which matches the date shown on Steam. So, there you have it. The Lost Gold was released on December 1st, 2003, not November 12th. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe it was because the other release dates weren't accurate that I assumed the Lost Gold was also questionable. And when I did find a now lost press release, I assumed that I had struck gold, which in a way I did. But this new evidence contradicts that. It's also worth noting that the Business Wire press release doesn't even mention a release date for the game at all. Thankfully, I've learned my lesson. When you're doing research, it's important to verify your information, and to cast a wide net, to prevent errors like this. So, there you go. That pretty much fills in the final piece of the puzzle. So now we've got all of the correct release dates for the classic You Don't Know Jack games so far. Except for one, the original. Now, as I've stated before, the first You Don't Know Jack may have come out in either one of these weekdays on the third week of October 1995. However, using the evidence from the latter three volumes, you might notice a little pattern. Volumes 2, 3, and 4 were all released on a Monday, and in keeping with this tradition, that would leave us with only one possible choice. So now comes the moment of truth. The release date for the very first You Don't Know Jack is Monday, October 16th, 1995. However, this is more of a de facto release date. The most likely case was that You Don't Know Jack got a rolling release. It was made available when stores got it, and in this case, it was probably around that time. But even if it wasn't exactly correct, with all that evidence collected and pieced together, I have a good chance that this may be the closest to getting the exact release date for the very first You Don't Know Jack. So, there you go. We have discovered not only the release date for the first You Don't Know Jack, but all of the correct release dates for all of the games in the classic bundle. It definitely took a while to figure out, but it was fun to search and put those pieces of evidence together, to say the least. Yeah, it turns out I was a little off on the date, but in my defense, I was really close. Since I made that video, a lot more research has been done, and recently I was able to uncover some more Berkeley systems history through an alternative berksys.com domain, which thankfully was archived. Under this domain, I managed to not only find the first edition of Berkeley's Toasted website before the revamp, but I also managed to find the press kits page, which not only contains release dates for some of Berkeley's other products, including the ones I've covered in my After Dark episode, but also the exact release date for the first You Don't Know Jack. Monday, October 23rd, 1995. Sadly, the press release itself is still lost, but if the other ones that were found are to be trusted, this is the actual release date for the very first You Don't Know Jack. In hindsight, this release date does make sense, considering the fact that the newest file on the disk, the README file, has a date of October 10th, and usually manufacturing didn't ramp up until a couple weeks later, as the latest file dates on the later Jack games show. So while I was off by only 1 week, I was pretty dang close. But now, after 4 flippin' years, we can finally put this treasure hunt to rest. But like I said earlier, this is for the original version, not the XL version which Jackbox reissued. And so that leaves us with another question to answer. When did that version come out? The first piece of evidence comes from a Computer Gaming Review article, which covered the release of both the You Don't Know Jack Question Pack and You Don't Know Jack XL, the latter of which crammed both the original and the expansion pack onto one disc. The article is dated April 1996, but if you look in the news archives on that very same website, it was published somewhere in between April 8th to the 12th. And this was where I got stuck for a moment, but luckily the other articles next to it gives us a little more evidence. One of the most notable ones was an article about Philips Paradise Tasmania 3D graphics card for Windows 95, and after doing a quick search on it, found out that the announcement date was April 10th, 1996. And seeing how none of the You Don't Know Jack games in the Classic Bundle were released on a Tuesday, pretty much confirms the de facto release date of both the Question Pack and You Don't Know Jack XL. Wednesday, April 10th, 1996. So, there you have it. The truth about You Don't Know Jack release dates. Hopefully this video sheds to light on what the actual release dates for most of the classic You Don't Know Jack games are, and hopefully you've learned something new in the process. Now, like I said before, I do plan on covering these games in more detail in an upcoming episode where I talk about the full history of Jackbox games, but again, it'll be a while before it's released into the wild. Again, that isn't happening unfortunately. However, like I said earlier, I haven't given up my dream of creating the ultimate Jackbox games encyclopedia. Thanks to significant help from the Jackbox community, we've launched what is called the Jackboxpedia, a non-profit wiki that is independently run by fans for fans. The goal of the Jackboxpedia is to cover every single Jackbox game, character, staff member, and even their comics. Because why not? It is also powered by MediaWiki, so it's lightweight, simple, easy to use, and ad-free. The Jackboxpedia has a team of trusted contributors who are playing a role in building this wiki. This includes some well-known members of the Jackbox community. If you fancy checking it out, visit jackbox.wiki. Obviously, it's not affiliated with Jackbox Games, and it is still work in progress, but it's coming along quite nicely. Now, before I let you go, there's one more thing I know my audience is begging to ask. Am I still doing my You Don't Know Jack retrospective? Yes. Yes, I am. You just have to be patient. I want to make sure I get this retrospective done right, so getting the most accurate information like what you've seen here is critical. 2025 also marks You Don't Know Jack's 30th anniversary, so I think it's only fitting that I release my retrospective around the time the original game came out. Anyways, I think that's enough chiming in here. Hopefully you've learned something new from this, and maybe taken the advice I gave. In the meantime, I'll let my past self finish off the rest of this video. So, have a good one. Now, before I do end this episode, I do have one more question to ask. How did Jackbox come up with these now incorrect dates in the first place? Well, that remains a mystery. But to give them credit, this was back in 2013. We didn't really have researching tools like the Internet Archive to find these more accurate dates for these games back then. Maybe Jackbox made some estimated guesses or whatever based on information available at the time. Who knows? But if someone over at the company does happen to come across this video, maybe they could jot a note down or two. But anyways, that'll about do it for this episode. I've got a few more coming in the pipeline, so stay tuned for those. And if you are new to this channel, feel free to like this video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can get notified of future episodes like this. But if you don't want to do the above, that's okay. Just watching this video and maybe sharing it with others helps. But for now, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time. Take care.